A very good afternoon to our audience this afternoon. My name is Christine Aquino. I am a managing editor at Bloomberg News, and I'm going to be stepping in for Matthew Dalton for this fireside chat. Very interesting, actually. I have with me Ivo Bowles, who is the president for Europe and Africa at Air Products, which is a company that provides industrial gases, related equipment, and expertise to businesses across different industries. And today's chat is going to be all about hydrogen and its role in building a resilient energy system. So let's get right to it. Ivo, I know you're very passionate about this topic, but for all of us here who are not experts in the audience, let's take a step back a little bit and maybe ask you first and foremost, why is hydrogen at the forefront of the conversation when it comes to energy resilience and efficiency?
Yeah, Christine, first of all, thanks for having me here and thanks for the opportunity and have the opportunity to interact with so many people that, as you spoke about passion, but I think throughout the days here, I felt passion and commitment of industries and actors in this room and joining online to really subscribe to what I think many governments and humanity reaching out and trying to find solutions to what all unites us, which is this, do something about global warming, avoid that as a planet we hit this critical tipping point. And it is from that end goal that we all share that we want to talk a bit about hydrogen, because we think hydrogen can play a very instrumental role as a solution to those quite significant carbon CO2 emitting sectors that are essential to how our societies operate. If we think about steel, if we think about cement, if we think about heavy duty transport, that is where hydrogen today will be necessary to make really significant strides, not only in just reducing the CO2 emissions, but also to keep us on track, and to bring solutions in the near term.
All right. So very important conversation indeed. And I just wanted to ask you as well, tell us a little bit about what Air Products is doing in the space, some of the projects that you're particularly excited about when it comes to making significant headwinds when it comes to developing hydrogen use for energy. And also, what are the lessons that you've learned in the process of making those investments, and what can you share with any other companies who aim to do the same?
That's going to take a couple of days, but
we have 23 minutes.
Yeah. No, but obviously I'm part of a company, Air Products, and you spoke about passion. Air Products has been a hydrogen supplier, and a very significant hydrogen supplier for over 70 years, ranging from the initial steps of the space program, where it was an essential molecule, into all of its uses in oil and gas refining, into chemicals, into hydrogen as a process gas. Meaning that today, as a company, we produce around 9,600 tons of hydrogen per day. We ship it in all modes of supply, whether that is in high pressure cylinders, whether it is in liquefied or compressed form, whether it is through a 1,100 kilometer long pipeline network. What I want to say is, for Air Products, it has and continues to be a very important product in our portfolio. But it also means we have a lot of technical expertise, not just on how to produce it, also in its logistics, how to bring it to the points of use, and actually to work with end users, customers, on how to actually manage it and how to apply it in a very efficient way.
Okay. And again, the lessons that you learned along the way, I'm sure it's probably a challenging space. What were kind of some of the, I guess, like biggest challenges that you encountered in trying to find those pockets of opportunity when it comes to developing hydrogen as an energy source?
So typically you could say when we talk about hydrogen, and mainly hydrogen for industrial or business use, it all starts with, can we supply that hydrogen in a reliable way? I'm sure later on in this conversation, we will come to the aspects of energy security, the security of supply chains. But quite frankly, if you look at the model with which we make the hydrogen molecule available to our customers, whether that was yesterday or tomorrow, the users count on the hydrogen always to be there. So reliability is critical. If we want to convince people to convert from traditional, maybe natural gas or other carbon fuels processes into an energy carrier like hydrogen, they will only do so, first of all, if it is reliable and obviously if it meets the economic standards under which they operate.
Okay. Well, that brings us nicely into my next question, which is really the broader framework that's currently being developed in this space. And we know, of course, that it's still very much in developing stages. There's not really kind of set regulation around it. It's still very much evolving. Could you walk us through kind of the regulatory landscape, if you will, at the moment, some of the promising developments that you've seen there, and perhaps where are there areas for improvement when it comes to the current legislation?
Yeah, it's almost like asking. I think in the last couple of years, there's been more talk about hydrogen than in many of the years before. Some people would categorize it, there is a hydrogen hype. Okay, good. We like that. The point is, however, that the hype, specifically if we talk about Europe, is not immediately followed by clear policies, clear regulation, certifications around it. So call it publicly defining and framing the playfield in which investors, companies like ourselves, or end users can operate and convert to hydrogen. So that remains, if we talk about urgency. Yesterday, you had people on the panel here, they said, yeah, it's all good and fine. We have solutions. We have a willingness to invest. But how are we responding to the call for action? I think particularly if we look at that landscape today, people mentioned yesterday the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States. I think from a European perspective, because we are in Paris, we can look at it and we can look at it with envy, because definitely for the production of renewable hydrogen or low carbon hydrogen, it is a very simple, it is a very applicable and a very significant accelerator for the production of that renewable hydrogen. Europe, of course, is not the US. It's really an association of countries that need to agree. But obviously, as Europe takes its commitments very serious, this step of providing that framework to private industry, to private investors, and mobilize these solutions at scale, there is a real urgency for policymakers to get that certification and get that renewable energy directive clarified around the hydrogen molecule.
Yeah. Well, let's take the conversation to Europe specifically then, since you touched on it a little bit. And I think you're absolutely right. You know, in Europe, it is very much a process of perhaps convening a bunch of different countries with different thoughts around how best to approach this before coming to kind of a set or framework, essentially, which takes a while. But you know, at the same time, in this region, we're also, as you mentioned earlier, facing very urgent issues of just finding alternative sources of energy, given what we're seeing in terms of the Russia-Ukraine situation. And perhaps that really drives home the point that we need to move faster on this. And so in that context, what do you think are kind of the challenges that Europe faces around, again, the conversation around hydrogen, but then also looking at this very real, very urgent issue of needing to be more independent when it comes to energy sources?
So, at least from the Air Products point of view, we look at the significance and the size of decarbonizing what I mentioned, the hard to abate industries or sectors. It is a vast potential of reducing emissions. So it's huge. It will need many, many companies to align, to invest, and to provide the hydrogen molecules required. We are also convinced that if in some geographies people believe, even within Europe, that it could be all provided for by local production of hydrogen, yeah, we believe that that is a difficult thing to achieve, knowing the huge potential of electrification. So basically saying, why would you move your green electrons or your renewable electricity within Europe to the conversion to hydrogen in Europe? There may be good reasons to develop a local hydrogen economy. Sure, why not to develop that? But it will never be enough. And this competition of local hydrogen production with the use of renewable power directly in electrification, I think, is an important thing to keep in mind. If we go to places with abundance of renewable energy in the sense of wind and solar, there is an enormous cost and scale advantage, because apart from the wind and the solar energy, this production of renewable hydrogen also needs significant space, which is a third component that in many of the geographies and the dense industrial areas of Europe is not available. So from an Air Products point of view, we think it's very important that policymakers, and we see indeed that many of the hydrogen plants across Europe are moving in that direction, to really recognize that there will be a combination between locally produced and imported. Which also goes to your question when you say, basically, how can you protect and how can you improve the reliability of your system? It is indeed by diversifying, not putting all your eggs in one basket, but saying we have a mix of sources for what will most likely be a very significant component of the decarbonization strategy.
Okay. And, obviously Air Products very much a pioneer in the space, and you've done a lot to kind of invest. But do you think that what could a company do, or other stakeholders such as yourself do to kind of speed up the building of that framework, particularly in Europe, considering all of our challenges in the region?
Yeah, so from an Air Products point of view, I think first of all, we have our chairman, Mr. Gessemi, who is absolutely convinced that whatever Air Products does, it will be a appreciable contribution, but the potential or the need for the hydrogen molecule in this goal of decarbonizing our economies is huge. It completely gives us the confidence that acting as a first mover, which is what we are doing, is completely justified for the company we are, the profile we have, and the responsibility and accountability we have versus our shareholders. Which means that as a company, at this moment in time, we have committed over $12 billion in real investment that is past FID. So this is not announcing possible plans dependent on all sorts of things. This is really executing. We're building. Yeah, we are building, and to some extent, we are building ahead of the market. Yeah, so there is a certain risk in it, but we feel, given the need and the potential, it is the right thing to do. That's where we have the right competence, we can bring the right partners together, and that is how we can make this real. Maybe on this point of how can you accelerate, I think many people in the room here are familiar with the development of, call it, mega projects. We start to use that term of mega project when we are in the scale of, say, the north of $1 billion of investment. Yeah. To execute these projects takes time. So again, providing that framework within which companies can develop and make the necessary decisions to do that, our lessons learned are that when you do your first project, it may take 5-6 years from the initial idea to really having your product available to the market. When you do your second or your third, you can cut that in half or even shorter. So the message is really, it's very important to start with your first project.
Okay. And you mentioned, obviously sizable financing and investment is very important in kind of developing the use of hydrogen and its role in decarbonization. But you also spoke a little bit about the importance of lending that expertise, right? Because this is a field that perhaps there are not a lot of experts at the moment. And so could you talk a little bit about, what Air Products, how Air Products is approaching that kind of knowledge sharing, expertise sharing process, and how important would you say that that is just as important as the financial aspect in terms of investing in the space?
Yeah, I'll answer on in two areas. First of all, I said 70 years in hydrogen gave us the opportunity to learn a lot. We benefited from working with a lot of what I would call very interesting users. I mean, working with the space program early on, I can guarantee they were discovering things and we could benefit from that. New materials, the safety around putting hydrogen in a spacecraft. I mean, you learn from it. We worked with, naval opportunities, even submarines and what have you, that say, look, it brings you in an environment where you say, if it can work there, you would actually be comfortable to have it in your basement. Yeah, it is that standard of safety and security, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Hydrogen is energy. It carries a lot of energy. So you want to work with it in a very responsible way. We can do this. We've done this over many years. We monitor it not only day by day, but second by second to make sure we do that in a very, very safe, responsible manner. Now I want to come and actually open it up more broadly than just Air Products. We are an industrial gas company. And obviously, as an industrial gas company, we are not alone, right? We have other industrial gas companies that are also in the hydrogen business. But as an industry, we have agreed over the years on a lot of standards and procedures to safeguard and to make sure and to ensure the safe use of hydrogen. The organizations that join us together, because where we have one common goal of safety, they also have it as their mission, and they promote that others, no matter from what industry they come, can fully benefit from those standards and procedures. People don't have to pay for that. You can go to the library. You can even find experts to explain, if necessary, how to use that. Because if we want to stand a chance that hydrogen becomes the acceptable fuel, that hydrogen becomes an acceptable alternative, the last thing we want is that we get stopped or that we get doubt casted on that carrier because of an irresponsible or an uneducated use.
Yeah. Well, and I think that brings us nicely to the next question as well, when it comes to the role of the end users and consumers in this process. Because I know that it's one thing working with governments and kind of developing the framework. That's very much a noble goal on a macro level. But then you also have to think about the other side of it, right? The more micro side. And as you mentioned, there are safety issues that any end user needs to be aware of. So, what are your thoughts in terms of kind of developing consumer end user expertise, and how do you think Air Products can help with that process?
So, first of all, there are a lot of users in the market today that are experts on how they use hydrogen today in their processes. Yeah, so there's a lot of knowledge. Where, of course, things are new is where hydrogen replaces other sources of energy. A simple example would be a furnace, or where the currently on natural gas and you convert to hydrogen. That is where indeed the combined expertise, not just of Air Products in this case, but also of the end user is required. And even in that case, the furnace builder. So typically how we go about that is most people, of course, they test the water because they run operations that represent major investments, major conversions. So setting up the pilot plants, learning by doing. Yeah, you can do a lot of calculations and hope for the best, but the pilot sites, which we support in quite a number of occasions, where industries are figuring out, whether it's the copper industry, the cement industry, glass, and they say, look, how could this work? The first thing is for them feasibility, reliability, and then of course the step, how can I scale up? And as they want to scale up, this is all good and fine, I have this ambition, but will the hydrogen be there? So will the infrastructure be there? Will the molecules be there? But on the application side, it is really a genuine collaboration between, on the one side, a supplier like ourselves, the provider or the OEM of the critical equipment, and the end customer. And where you see that happening, it's less so that very critical technological barriers need to be resolved. It's really around, how do you fine tune your operation? Because those people have spent years fine tuning the efficiency of their operations, and that is what they have to regain. It works, but does it work as good, or is it as efficient of the process they want to convert?
So, yeah, that fine tuning process that you mentioned probably requires quite a bit of skill, I would imagine. And so, do you think that this process of developing hydrogen as an energy source also has the potential of creating really a talent pool of highly skilled, very expert, sort of potential, the next generation that can take this further into the future?
Yeah, I think like with many technologies that sort of become very significant in a geography or in an industry, we will be looking at talent that sort of converts into these type of applications. As I said before, it's sometimes it's good to demystify things. I think if we say how big is the barrier or how high is the threshold, looking at hydrogen at a very regular basis, I think we've got plenty of well-educated talent, not only in Europe, but around the world, that can handle that, manage that, and probably come up with solutions we're not even thinking of or seeing anywhere near on the horizon. So I have no doubt people will figure it out. And in some cases, we will end up with processes and applications that are far better than what we ever imagined was possible, looking at the traditional way of doing things, of making some of these products. But obviously, key thing again is create that platform, because there again, talent moves with a clean, clear view of what is the future, right? If the right people can't see where that future is leading them, they may make other choices, right? They may say, look, this is a cleaner, clearer path. It looks exciting. That's where that's where my talent or my hours will serve first. And again, it is this trajectory, this future trajectory that can be appealing, very appealing to talent, but we have to be clear on where we're heading.
Yeah, well, so we could potentially be looking at the next Nobel Prize winner coming out of the hydrogen industry. That's certainly a
very possible.
All right. Well, we have just a few minutes left, and since we talked about the future, Evo, I want to do a little bit of forecasting and gazing into our crystal balls here, and kind of just ask you about your insight into in heading into the next year and next couple of decades. So let's start with just the next year, right? Where would you want to see the industry in terms of what we would have achieved by the end of 2023, either in terms of achievements when it comes to solidifying the policy framework, or perhaps increasing even more that expertise among end users? What do you think?
Yeah, so from our point of view, obviously, I spoke about there is the production, the supply side, and there is the end user, the demand side. And obviously, both need to come together. If we say, what is our end goal? We want to have less CO2 emissions. So on the production side, as I said, maybe homing in briefly on Europe, it is really around getting the regulatory framework, the certification in place, accepting or at least understanding that both locally produced hydrogen and imported hydrogen are essential if we really want to come close to delivering on our commitments of decarbonizing key industries, key emitters. So that is quite essential that we make that step. It is within reach, and we can definitely get there by the time frame you were referencing. It's months if we put our minds to it. On the end user side, of course, it is once that framework is there, building the trust and having the right policies to stimulate those conversions, those energy transitions where they really contribute in the short term. I mean, many countries have goals for reduction of emissions by 2030. That's where we can do it. That's where the opportunity is. And that is, if the right framework is there, people will and can convert.
Okay. And zooming a little bit further into the future, 20 years from now, what would you like Air Products' legacy to be remembered as?
Yeah, if you talk about a legacy, it's very difficult not to make it very personal. So, because that's how we think about things, right? And I would say something very, very simple. I would actually like my kids to say, my dad contributed on reducing significantly the emissions of industry. That's all.
All right. And on that lovely note, we conclude this fireside chat. I hope you enjoy that. So thank you very much for sticking with us. And Ivo, thank you so much for sharing your insights as well.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.